What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. So now we are in mid October, which means that we are now less than 13 months away from the 2024 presidential election. It's getting closer and closer and closer. And of course, Joe Biden is in an uphill battle for re-election. I'm not saying he won't get re-elected because there have been other presidents who, at this stage of their administration, looked as if though they may not get reelected, and many of them did, and oftentimes decisively. Back in 1947, it looked like Truman would not get reelected. You could argue, even though polling was not extensive back then, you could argue that at this point in 1915, it looked like Woodrow Wilson may not get reelected. As hard as it is to believe, even Ronald Reagan, at this point in 1983, it wasn't a sure thing he was going to be reelected. On the other hand, you had a guy like George H.W. Bush in 1991. It looked like he would get reelected easily, but you just never know about these things. But right now, he is in trouble. And in particular, Joe Biden has a Pennsylvania problem. I'll put a link to this article in the pinned comment in the comment section below. Pennsylvania, since the 1990s, has been more or less, on the presidential level at least, reliably Democratic. Between 1988 and 2016, in each election, Pennsylvania voted Democratic on the national level. The last time they had went Republican before 2016 was George H.W. Bush in 1988, and even then, he won the state narrowly over Michael Dukakis by about 100,000 votes. Even Reagan, when he won that 49 state landslide against Walter Mondale back in 1984, when he won 49 states, he carried Pennsylvania by a somewhat narrow margin of 53 to 47. Won about 6 points. So I say all that to say this. Ever since 2008, when Barack Obama carried Pennsylvania by more than 600,000 votes and a 10-point margin in the popular vote, Democrats' grip on Pennsylvania have been slipping. In 2012, Barack Obama once again carried Pennsylvania over Mitt Romney this time, before that it was over McCain, but his margin dropped from over 600,000 votes to about 310,000, and he won the popular vote by a little over 5 points. So it was definitely a drop. In 2016, of course, Donald Trump narrowly carried Pennsylvania, becoming the first Republican since George H.W. Bush in 1988 to win that state, to win the Keystone State. And he carried it by, look at the figures right now, approximately 45,000 votes. Then, of course, in 2020, he lost the state narrowly to Joe Biden, but he lost it by about a margin of maybe 85 to 90,000 votes. About 80,000 votes, I say. So, this state has become more or less of a battleground state rather than the blue-leaning state it's been for the past 30 years. It's something's going on, because right now in polling, despite the fact that Joe Biden has roots to Pennsylvania, even though he was a long-time senator from Delaware, he was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania. He had roots in Pennsylvania. But despite that, because of the perception that Joe Biden is a raging liberal, even though his long-term record doesn't say that, because his administration is perceived to be the most progressive since the FDR administration in 1930s and 40s, the Democratic Party is losing touch with voters in Pennsylvania. And despite his roots, right now he's losing to Trump in Pennsylvania by a narrow margin of 40 to 39. Now, of course, this is a year off the election, and of course, it's a high. If you look at the numbers, 40 to 39, that means that over 20% of the electorate is undecided. So it's far from decided, but Pennsylvania is a problem. Another state that could be a potential problem for Democrats is Michigan. Michigan is another state that Democrats for the last 20 or 30 years used to win decisively. The last Republican to win that state before Trump won it, I believe, was Reagan. Let me see something. Bush might have won it in 1988. Let me see. I sometimes forget whether he carried this. I think he did carry that state. Yeah, Bush did carry it. So, like Pennsylvania, Michigan, from the 90s onward, until Trump, was a reliably Republican state. In 1988, Republican Bush beat Dukakis in that state by a 54 to 46% margin. But in 1992, in a three-man race between Clinton, Bush, and Perot, Clinton won it 44% to 36% and 19% for Perot. Clinton improved his margins against Bob Dole and Perot in 1996, getting 52% of the vote in Michigan compared to just 38% for Bob Dole and 9% for Ross Perot in 1996. Even in the razor-thin election of 2000 between George W. Bush and Al Gore, Gore carried Michigan by a 51 to 46% margin, still a comfortable margin. Even in 2004, when George Bush became the last Republican to win the popular vote, Kerry still bested Bush in Michigan by a 51 to 48% margin. 2008, Barack Obama beat McCain in a landslide in Michigan, 57% to 41%. However, in 2012, the same trend continues. It started becoming more competitive. Obama beat Romney in Michigan, but it was closer. Now, you could say, of course, Romney was a better fit for Michigan than McCain, but still, 54% to 45%. But then, in 2016, Trump narrowly beat Hillary in Michigan by a margin of only 0.2% in the popular vote and only 9,000 votes, but he beat her. Now, of course, in 2020, Biden won the state, but when you consider the fact that Trump was dealing with a terrible economy in which $17 trillion was lost due to the pandemic, an ongoing pandemic, racial strife and disharmony going on in the country, Biden carried the state, but by a 51 to 48% margin. So these states are becoming, a lot of these blue states in themselves are becoming more and more competitive. Now I'm going to tell you why I bring this up. There's a reason why a lot of majority black cities in this country, which are heavily Democratic, have all of a sudden become infiltrated by refugees, aka immigrants, because Democrats see them as potential votes to help shore up elections in states that they have been winning or states that they think could be competitive in. But it's the reason why Republican governors in Texas and Florida are kicking them out, because they want those states to keep trending red. But despite the fact that crime is going up in New York, crime is going up in all these cities, and I'm not knocking immigrants, but you got to do it the right way. coming to this country the right way. Now all of a sudden, because election time is coming up, now all of a sudden Joe Biden is talking about border security. All of a sudden, now he's talking about that. After potentially hundreds of thousands, if not a million, illegal immigrants have come and crossed over and being shipped. And, I don't have to go into all of that. I'm trying to make this video about that, but just trying to get people to open up their eyes about a lot of the stuff that's going on in this country. Like I said, it's on both sides. But anyway, Pennsylvania could be a very, very pivotal state in this election. If Trump was to carry Pennsylvania, that would be a good sign for him. If Biden was to carry it, that would be big, but I think it's bigger for Biden, considering that Pennsylvania has lately been a blue state. If he loses Pennsylvania, a state that he carried in 2020, that's not a good sign. And you can read the article for yourself about what's going on with Joe Biden and Democrats. A lot of it, people aren't happy with the party. And hell, people within the party aren't happy with Joe Biden. So, this is going to be a very interesting next 12 months, 13 months. So, we'll have to see. Tell me what you guys think.